Hello there again. My name is Brandy. I just wanted to start kind of a grief journal, video grief journal. And so I decided to go ahead and post it on YouTube for women who may not have some form of support or relatability. I know that I lived in Germany for a while, and there were some of the women there that would wear black for a year. They didn't have another real outlet for grief or someone to relate or understand. At least in the few women that I did meet, several of them were widowed. In this particular case, my son died of SIDS in April of 2010 while he was at a babysitter's home. My family has received extensive counseling on it. I am by no means an expert. I've just been through an ordeal that no mother wants to go through. This holiday season is Thanksgiving. Christmas is coming up shortly behind it. It's entirely different than the first year, right after we lost Trace. That first year, I did not feel like doing Thanksgiving at all. In fact, I normally bring a large dinner and invite several friends. That year I felt like we needed to change the entire tradition, and that of course was my choice to do. We could have easily gone to a restaurant that was open just to do something that was different and still celebrate. I do have 3 kids, and it's important to them to still have normalcy and be able to celebrate as a family. We usually play games, cards, Monopoly, all kinds of fun games, Candyland, anything that piques our interest at the moment. But for Thanksgiving within the first year, I can tell you that I was not in any kind of mood to decorate. Usually Thanksgiving Day or Thanksgiving weekend, we put out the Christmas decorations, and that year I just did not want to. So a friend of mine invited us to another town, and so we did a short vacation just a few hours away, and she offered to cook Thanksgiving meal for me. That was something that was out of our norm. I'm not used to being away from home, family, inviting a whole house full of friends and family. And so to break tradition for me was very necessary. It was a much needed change, and it gave me some relief from taking on the burden of the entire meal at our home. And although it's not a burden now, for the things that I was going through at the time, it would have been. This year I did decide to, I finally felt like I could cook again. I finally felt like I could interact with people. I did go ahead and decide to have family and friends over. There wasn't anything really spectacular or special that we did. I will be taking some things to my son's grave, but overall the holiday this season has been a little bit more normal than the first holiday season right immediately after my son's death. If you're right at the beginning of an immediate loss, you may feel like there's no hope. You may feel like you don't want to celebrate the holidays. Those are completely normal, I think, after a trauma or tragedy. Don't let anybody tell you how to grieve or put it in a box in a certain way. Of course, if it gets out of control where you're thinking harmful towards yourself or other people, that certainly needs to be addressed quickly by a professional or counselor. But as far as making special traditions just for yourself, your family, and to celebrate the life of your loved one, certainly give yourself permission to do that. For my daughter and I, during the summer, we began making Christmas ornaments, and we decided to make some for my son and also my little brother, who had died of SIDS when I was 11. I was almost 12. So we made ornaments for both my son and my little brother, and they'll be hanging on the tree this year. We did go ahead and get the ornaments out, get the tree out, all of the fun things that we once celebrated, but right in the beginning it was not anything that I could have even fathomed. We have begun to make new traditions. I don't cook heavy meals the way that I used to. It's just not something that interests me right now. In the very beginning, I didn't want to listen to music. I just couldn't stand listening to certain kind of music, and I have to be very guarded against what I do listen to, because I do tend to end up becoming sad, and some things do tend to affect me that way. You may find that you're in the same predicament where music really affects you. It affects you at your soul and your heart level. If there are things that you can do to celebrate the life of your child or your loved one, certainly do those things. With my son's birthday having come around this year, we decided we would go ahead and celebrate with a cake and release balloons just outside of our back door. That was very difficult in that he was not here, but we had decided to celebrate his life so that we could all partake in that. And that may not be something that we do every year, but for that emotion or that recognition to have taken place as an entire family unit, it sure made all the difference to me as a mother. One of the things that I found helpful was journaling. You may or may not find journaling helpful too, but if there are things that were left unsaid that you'd like to say to your loved one, it's a good thing to be able to write them and give them a written form. I have journaled to Trace as though I could talk out my thoughts to him, and it just gives such a sense of release. And I don't have to do that all the time. Just in the very beginning, I journaled a lot. It's slowed down some. There are now weeks where I go without it, even a month without having done that, and it may taper off completely, but that is something I've given myself permission to do. Also, people that were involved with the entire trauma, if there were any feelings involved with that, messages of thank yous, I would write those things down and journal them. As well as I've gotten really good at making sure that when I have a thank you to say or an appreciation to give towards someone, then I make sure that I get that written down onto a card or a piece of paper and I mail it immediately. I think that it's put into perspective how short life is and how clear it is that I need to be prompt about giving thank yous and appreciation, especially with my children. I think that it's brought into our home much better sense of appreciation for each other and how much we need each other. It's brought us closer together as a family unit, being able to talk about our emotions, our feelings, our anxieties, our joys, the things that we'd like to celebrate, and new traditions that we'd like to make. And I hope that you find yourself able to move through the grief, because it is not something that you ever get over. I've had that said to me, why don't you just get over it? Well, it's not something that you just get over. I'd say that metaphorically it is like losing an arm or a limb and having to readjust living without that part of you. And so in a sense, when you have that part of your family removed, and it is permanent, they're gone, it's like you're operating without a limb. A poem that I heard recently was about a tree that got ripped to shreds in a storm, and it lost limbs and branches and was split apart in the middle, and didn't look much like a tree after the storm had blown through it. And yet, as days and months and weeks and years went by, it then began to grow new branches and new leaves. I understand that metaphor, in that we do tend to grow through tragedy. So you do get to a point where you are able to grow again, where you are able to move through the grief, and you begin to find new ways to cope. And I think we're built like that, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. We're built to be capable of moving through something and adapting and adjusting. Sometimes there just aren't words for all the emotions. But I hope for this holiday season that you find hope in it, that you find encouragement, that you make new traditions, that you make new memories, and that you move through your grief journey being strong and being encouraged. And until I see you again, happy holidays.